All right, we're going to continue with our Abraham Lincoln book, but first, let's review our words. We have biography, the true story of someone's life; emancipate, which means to set free; jealousy, that feeling that you have when you want something that others had. The kids that called Abe school butter, they were jealous because they didn't get to go to school. And now we have the word conflict. And conflict means that there's a disagreement or an argument. So we'll see how that comes into it today. So we're going to continue with Abraham Lincoln by Augustus Stevenson. Today we're going to read Grandfather and the Indians. On a rainy day, Mother Nancy Lincoln was spinning wool. Sarah and Abe were watching her. They loved watching Mother spin. They loved to watch the great wheel go round and round. They loved to see the spindle turn. Mother, said Abe, I would rather watch you spin than do anything else. So would I, said Sarah. Mrs. Lincoln laughed. I know something that both of you would rather do, she said. You would much rather listen to your father tell some of his stories. Sarah and Abe didn't know what to say. They did love to hear Father tell stories. Mother laughed again. That's all right, children, she said. There isn't anyone who could tell stories as well as your father. The neighbors all say that, and you know they visit us sometimes just to hear him. I know they do, said Sarah proudly. I'm going to tell stories too when I'm a man, said Abe. Just then, the door opened quickly, and in came Father Thomas Lincoln with a great gust of wind and rain. He was dripping wet. His clothes, his coonskin hat, his deerskin moccasins. This is a bad storm, he said. I can't work in the field and I can't work in the woods. I can't even hunt or fish. It will give you a chance to rest, said Mrs. Lincoln. Sarah, take your father's wet cap. Abe, take his moccasins. Sarah hung the dripping cap on a peg in the wall across the room from the fireplace. Abe put the dripping moccasins in a corner that was not too near the fireplace. Mr. Lincoln was pleased. I see you children know how to take care of skins as well as little Indians do, he said. He sat on the fireside bench, and soon his wet clothes began to dry. Would you like to hear a story, children? He asked. Yes, yes, cried Sarah and Abe. Bring up your stools, and I'll tell you a true story. It's about your grandfather, Abraham Lincoln. That's my name, too, said Abe. You were named for him, said Mr. Lincoln, and I hope you will grow up to be as brave a man as he was. Wasn't he afraid of anything? Abe asked. Nothing, said Father, not even Indians. He was a soldier in the Indian War. Did he wear a blue coat with brass buttons? Asked Sarah. Indeed he did, Father said. He was the captain of his company, and he helped to drive the Indians out of these woods. Never forget that, children, said Mother, and always be good soldiers. I want to stop for a minute because I think this is important. Abe's parents are telling him to respect soldiers. They think that's very important. And I know that the lessons that a person's parents teach them help influence them. So I think that Abe is going to remember this lesson when he is president. Remember that Abe isn't just any little boy. He's a little boy that's going to grow up to become president. What could I do for a soldier? Abe asked. You could show respect by taking off your cap when you meet one, said Father. You could get him a drink of water, said Mother, or give him some food. What do soldiers eat? Sarah asked. Anything they can get, said Father, and plenty of that. Mother laughed. The children laughed. Then Father said, Abe, throw a log on the fire, and I'll tell you a story. Father's story. Now Abe was only 7 years old, but he lifted a log and put it in the fireplace. And look, even though he's only 7, that's an awfully big log he's picking up. Isn't Abe strong? Said Sarah. I like to be strong, said Abe, and I can help Father in the field. Father nodded. Just as I helped my father when I was a little boy. In fact, that is part of my story. You see, children, my father was a farmer just as I am, only he owned more land and horses and cows than I do. We own horses, said Abe. We own cows, said Sarah, and calves. Not half as many as my father had, said Mr. Lincoln, and he owned more than 2,000 acres of land. He must have been rich, said Sarah. No, Sarah, he wasn't rich. He worked in his fields every day, and my brothers and I worked with him. One spring morning, when I was about 6 years old, he took me to the cornfield that was close to the woods. Were there Indians in the woods? Asked Abe. There had been, but Father thought they would never return. The soldiers had built a fort near our farm, so we felt quite safe. Father stood there and looked over the field. Too many weeds, he said. We'll pull them, Thomas. He stooped over, but he didn't pull a single weed. Something terrible happened. What? Cried Sarah and Abe. I heard a shot. I saw my father fall. He didn't speak again. He was dead. Indians, said Abe. Indians, said Sarah. Yes, said Father, Indians. They were hiding in the woods, waiting for Father to come to the cornfield. Poor grandfather, said Sarah. They killed one of the best men in the country, said Mr. Lincoln. And that wasn't all, children. They tried to get me. You, cried the children. An Indian ran out of the woods and seized me. He began to drag me out of the field. Oh, cried Sarah and Abe. I was frightened nearly to death. I thought I would never see my mother again. Poor little boy, said Mrs. Lincoln. We were now at the edge of the field. Another step or two and the Indians would have me in the woods. But again something happened. I heard another shot, and I saw the Indian fall. He didn't speak or move. He was dead. Who shot him? Asked Abe. My oldest brother, and he was only 12. He shot from our cabin door. And here's a picture of the Indian trying to drag young Thomas off into the cornfield. But he might have hit you instead of the Indian, said Abe. The Indian that had a hold of you when your brother fired. He had to take the chance, said Mr. Lincoln. My second brother had run to the fort for the soldiers. My mother could see the other Indians in the woods, and she was afraid I wouldn't reach the cabin alive. By that time, the soldiers had come. They drove the Indians out of the woods, and they never returned. I'm sorry about grandfather, said Abe, but I'm glad that the Indians didn't get you. And that's where we're going to stop for today. And let's talk about it for just a moment. Why was Mother spinning wool? Well, she spins wool so that she can make their clothes, right? So she has to get the yarn to turn it into fabric. Mr. Lincoln had time to tell stories today because it was a terrible storm, so he couldn't do anything outside. How was Abe's grandfather different from his father? Well, apparently he owned a lot more land, a lot more horses, a lot more cows. He had more than Thomas has. And the Indian was able to shoot grandfather because he wasn't looking for it. He wasn't prepared. He felt safe. He didn't think there were Indians anymore. And then young Thomas was able to escape because one of his brothers, so one of Abe's uncles, saved him. And then the soldiers came and everybody was okay. Thanks for listening, and we'll do some more next week.